Hello and welcome to Impact Africa, our online talk show where we get to have conversations with diverse people and organizations who are impacting lives positively. This is me, Kemi Akiode Adebayo, aka Mama K. And in today's program, since we're still celebrating the month of International Women's Day as per the United Nations, and the theme for this year is breaking the bias, if you don't know that already. Well, you're going to listen to a conversation that I had sometimes last year with 4 amazing women who are doing amazing work in the community through their work and what they do as well as a woman. So yes, we decided to feature this because these are important topics, for us as women, from health to how COVID has, impacted us, to juggling, roles that we play. So I asked Dr. Lynette Jensen-Olarogun, to give us tips for older women and even under 50-year-old women, because you need to start early, on what more we can do as women, for our health. And I had our dear sister, Tertia Steynberg, who is an artist, and she does a lot of things for women as well in the Western Cape. And I asked her about how she juggles, her role as a mother, grandmother, wife, and various other things that she does. And then our young dear Tamara Maweni, I asked her as well, she's an accountant. I asked her within her career how she has managed, to cope and, what she's done, during COVID, to advance her career as an accountant. Last but not the least, my sister, dear friend, Pastor Tolu George, I asked her as well about how women, could cope, during this challenge in terms of COVID. I know, in some countries, COVID is now kind of, we have to live with it, and I believe we have to live with it. But how are we all still coping? So enjoy. So what tips or nuggets, can you share with us as help tips for older women over 50 or even under 50 so that they can not go the steps that I've been? Thank you.
Sure. All right. So being a woman is very complicated, really. It starts when you are born. You are born with so much pressure on you. It all starts when hormonal changes occur when you first get your period. And, in order to improve your health long term, you really need to start looking after your body early. And that's what you're saying. And for us peri 50 people, we really wish we had started earlier. But certainly from 45 to 55, the body changes significantly. It changes physically, it changes emotionally. The pressures on the body are just magnified. The emotional impact of getting to the end of your reproductive career, the hormonal factors, because now you're going through the perimenopause, and that ranges from 45 to 55. And I'm sure for those who are our age, Kemi, they will know what we're talking about. That after 45, things go downhill significantly. And the problem is that initially with the menopause, you just have the simple symptoms in terms of hot flushes, not being able to sleep, very irritable, mood swings, night sweats, a little bit of headaches. But it's the long-term impacts that are more important, because the short-term impacts, the as we call it, the vasomotor symptoms of hormones changing, can be managed. It can be managed by adjusting your diet. There's a lot of talk about yam and soya. There's a lot of talk around with hot flushes to wear only cotton attire, to have a little fan, to have a little spritzer just to make you feel better. And we can adjust those with hormones as well. But long term, there's a lot of talk always in the media, and there've been so many medical changes in terms of what we do, because we've been so worried about breast cancer. But really, there are other things that are protected by taking hormones. And those things are brain protection. So in terms of estrogen dependent or deficiency dementia. There are protective effects on the heart to reduce the risk of heart attacks. Right. There's positive effects once again on the blood vessels in the brain to reduce the effects on or the complications with strokes, and then also bone protection. So if there's a risk of osteoporosis, osteopenia, if we do not protect our bones. So in simple ways, we can start by exercising. In terms of bones, if you do 3 weight-bearing exercise programs, 20 to 30 minutes a week, you improve the bone buildup, the bone growth, the bone stimulation, and you reduce the impact of decreased bone mass, decreased osteoporosis. In terms of exercising, once again, if you're walking briskly and you're taking a power walk, you're really stimulating the heart effects, you're increasing the blood flow to the heart. And with walking and exercising or jogging, for example, you're also releasing positive endorphins. So you are really making yourself happy, And in terms of exercising once again, and you are also potentially exercising with somebody else. So you're using your brain, you're chatting to that person, you're sharing ideas, you're stimulating yourself. So exercise is important. What you eat is important. So for the perimenopause, we certainly as gynecologists, we check your cholesterol levels, your sugar levels, your iron levels, your thyroid functions, anything that can negatively impact on your health. And we try and correct that, be that by referring you to a dietitian, by just advising on diet, by referring you to a physician to ensure that you are healthy all around. And then also just encouraging you to go for exercising, to eat properly, to watch your weight. Of course, weight has a negative impact. And unfortunately, the perimenopause does cause you to put on some fat. It does. And by improving your health and your lifestyle, you can reduce those negative impacts. At the same time, you have to go and see a doctor. You have to go for pap smears. You have to go because that reduces the risk of cervical cancer. It does not reduce the risk of ovarian cancer. So you would still need an ultrasound to check your ovaries, to make sure that there are no other features that we usually look out for. We have to ensure that patients who've had pap smears also have to have a human papilloma virus test to ensure that they're not at risk of cervical cancer. And of course, the breasts. We have to examine the breasts, and at least every 18 months to 2 years, you must have a mammogram. And all of those are very important to ensure that your health is assessed and managed completely. And we also, at this stage, after 50, we also refer you to a gastroenterologist or a gastric surgeon to check and start screening for colon cancer, and by doing a colonoscopy. And the important thing, as I said earlier, people worry so much about breast cancer with hormone replacement therapies and stuff. Hormone replacement therapy helps with brain, helps with heart, helps with bones, but it also reduces the risk of colon cancer. So as much as there's so much negativity in the press, there really are many positive impacts of hormone replacement therapy. And really take care of yourself. This is the time that I don't know, I think we almost blossom when we get to the menopause. Once we've settled ourselves, accepted that we're not going to have babies, accepted that our bodies are getting older, and actually taking care of ourselves and ensuring that we are okay, to ensure that we live a longer life, that we live a healthy life, that we are positive role models to our daughters and our sisters and our friends, because we have to do it ourselves. It's not just about the doctor doing it. It's what you do for yourself that is so much more important.
A nurse to me is resilient, empathetic, and quick-witted, and they really provide quality control for us as consultants. They are so committed to excellent healthcare that they're willing to do it in whichever situation they find themselves.
So, my dear Tertia, tell us, in just short words, who is Tertia? In just a short word, yes.
First of all, thank you, Kemi, for inviting me. Honestly, I didn't think I have anything too special to say, because as you mentioned it, I realized those are all the things that I'm doing. And first, most importantly, I'm just enjoying life. Yeah, I'm a trained teacher. I didn't do that for too long because I understood that I'm more a coach than a teacher. But I was born my dad was an artist. So for me, it was the most natural thing to just go and paint. And then things didn't just stop there for me. I furthered my education through doing courses, especially in family therapy, play therapy, and then recently coaching. And I must say, I think I enjoyed that mostly. And for me, I'm just a person that really likes to bring people together, and especially women. I like bringing women together because I realize that we can't do it all on ourselves. Correct. If we do it all on ourselves, we receive the top of the mountain and you realize you're all alone, and then you have to go back, and then you have to go and fetch somebody else to be on that mountain together with you. So this is why I started doing retreats, art retreats at our farm. And that is going for the 8th year now. And I must say, people come and they say, really, I won't be able to paint. Then after 3 or 4 days, they leave with 2 or 3 or 4 paintings, and they're really chuffed with themselves. But somebody, when on a Women's Day, a preacher in the church that I was visiting, he gave a sermon, and that was about this old forester. The forester that he went to the source of the fountain. And he every week he would go and he would take away all the leaves that got stuck there and all the twigs and everything. Because at the end of that fountain was a river, and that river fed the whole town downstairs, down the mountain. Wow. And it was just always clean, and it was just always feeding the nation. I'm just saying that, feeding the nation, because that is where I want to come through. Right. And then they started falling ill, and they didn't realize what was the matter. And then the younger people had to go up the mountain, and they had to go and look for the source. And then they realized that this old man, this old forester, died because he knew this had to be kept clean to be able to be pure at the end of the line. So then they only realized what important work that old man did. And then they had, So for me, that became a real motto of my life. And that is why I also started doing counseling with children and really from identity, our identity as women, to embrace womanhood and to be proud of who you are and how God created you. And in realizing that, and you come in a good space in your heart about yourself and who you are and what you are doing, you can keep the space for somebody else so that they can become who they are in the space that you live. so you don't have to get into their body. And thank you, Dr. Lynette. That was such good advice, and especially about the exercises. And I always have to remind myself. But that is the work that Dr. Lynette is telling us. She can just tell us, do these things, and it will be better at the end of the day. And if we start even younger with the little ones, the women, if they can be okay with being a woman, you know, we at our farm, the little a grape farm, but these little new sprouts, they get in everywhere. You don't realize how could they come there. and I always, if I want to train a woman, we've got a soft way, we've got a soft approach to actually become to where we have to be. We got to be. We don't have to join the fight. We can be that little new growth that just gets in there, and once we're there, they don't realize how, but then we can make the impact as women.
So how do you juggle, all this role as a grandmother, as a, mother, as a wife, as, a woman supporting other women? How do you juggle it? Or what tips can you give us on how to juggle role? I was just sharing with you, my own lifestyle. I always tell people, well, you need to get a balance. And I'm like, well, my balance could be like this today, where it's fun and work. And tomorrow it's going to be like this. So what tips, or nuggets can you give people like me, and other people out there who struggle with juggling, the multi, the different hats we women, play. You get back from work, you have to continue cooking, and you've got a child, if you have young ones, what tips or nuggets can you share, with us?
Kimmy, that truly is a difficult one for women, because we are really just about everything. We are like a machine. We do it and we can do it, and then we do it. But that is the thing is, you mentioned balance, but you know what? Sometimes we are so busy and we don't realize we just kept going. But to come into the awareness of your body and let your body tell you, you have to stop. Before that, we must realize, the Jews has a very good day. They call it Shabbat. And that is a time of rest. It doesn't, it can be that is a principle that is very important. So do your stuff, go and do everything that you want to do, and please enjoy doing it. And that could also be a problem, because you also then don't know how to stop. But always work in rest, always work in a day of rest, where you either go to a friend and just have a nice cup of tea, make little breaks everywhere, so that it's just to recuperate your body. And so that is a big nugget for me. And then know what you should take on and what you shouldn't take on. And you will soon enough know what you shouldn't take on, and then find a very good way to get out of that place quickly.
Right. If you can share with us as well any tips or nuggets, because you're a career woman and you've worked, within your career, you've worked up your career, and you're one woman that I've sent other accountants to say, oh, go and speak to Tamara. And thank you for indulging me. So if you could share any tips for young women out there, especially in this COVID season, as well, coping with their career and how they could progress within their career or even balancing, their career. So thank you, Tamara. But share with us as well some information about who is Tamara. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Pleasure to be here. For me, the one thing I always say is to people, always believe in your dreams. Like when I was growing up, I remember I grew up in the Eastern Cape. So I used to come to Cape Town just to visit family on the June or December holidays. And the one day we were driving and I saw UCT and I was about 10. And I asked, what is that? Where is that place? And my cousins were like, oh, that's a university, it's the University of Cape Town. And I told myself, actually, when I grow up, I want to go to school there.
Wow.
And at that time, I was going to a school that wasn't like one of the best schools, but I was one of the top achievers. So I would be like the top students in the grade. And I said to my grandparents then, I said, no, this is not working for me. I don't feel challenged. Like if I'm like slacking and I'm still at the top of my class, then that means this is not a really good school. Is there a possibility that I could change schools to somewhere where I can feel more challenged and something that will get me to, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I want to get to UCT. And being in the school that I'm in, at that time I was in grade 5. And I'm like, it's not going to get me there. So
wow. At that age, that's deep.
I always have had a drive because I think the other thing is being not being raised by your biological parents. You don't have that security of I can do anything I want. You always have that thing of at any point in time, I can lose these 2 people who are supporting me right now. And what will I do then? Where will I go? So for me, it was always, I need direction. I need to know where I'm going. And even though I didn't know what I was going to be, I just knew that UCT was where I was going to end up. And through that, I changed schools. I went to a girls' school, Clarendon Girls High School, and then Clarendon Girls High School. Through that, I ended up in UCT. And I studied accounting and went on to start my first job. I remember my first job was not high paying, but I said, you know what, I'm here for a purpose. I'm here to be a trainee accountant. I can do this. Even though my salary is not the best, I'm not going to say no to this opportunity and look for something that will give me more money. I'm going to work myself and I know what my dream is and I know where I'm headed. So having that inner personal drive to say, this is what I'm going to do, even though there's obstacles facing me, because obviously I was in Cape Town. At that time, Cape Town, for Black accountants, this was tough. You wouldn't get the best opportunities, but you needed to make it work. Even the clients sometimes would, when they realized, because I mean, my name is Tamara, and my previous name before I got married was Yako. And then they would think, oh, maybe she's Chinese or something. But the minute they would meet me and realize I'm Black, they're like, oh, there's a Black girl doing my books. I don't trust them. So I've had to fight through all of those things to get to where I am. And after a while, after being an accountant for a while, I realized actually, no, I think I'm done with the accounting world for a little bit and I need a new challenge. And that's when I became a banker. So now I'm working for Investec Bank as a banker and I'm really enjoying it and it's challenging me. So for me, it's always about what are you doing to improve yourself? Yeah. Are you going to stay in that comfort zone where you're getting your salary and that's it? Or are you going to strive to be more? And I always feel that if you sleep on your dreams, then you won't really feel fulfilled. You'll just be going to and from work. And the other important thing is once you get that role and once you work, what are you doing with your money? Because many young people out there always first thing they buy is a car because I want to show that I'm flashy, I've got money, and you know the one thing people associate with status, unfortunately, is a car. For me, I always say to people, don't do that unless you need it for your work. If you can do, especially now we've got Ubers, we've got DDs, we've got Bolt. Don't buy a car, rather invest in a home because the home is the one thing that will grow with you. Whereas the car, you spend so much money and at the end of about 6-7 years, that car dies and you literally have to now go purchase a new one. So I always say to people, always plan ahead, even with your career, with your money. If you make wise choices and you stop and you think and you're like, well, how will this impact me? And especially as a Black child, we also suffer from Black tax, where back home, you're probably the first child to go with university. Then at home, they expect you to support them as well. I always say to people, always manage your parents' expectations, because sometimes you might be struggling to make it from day to day, but to them, because they know you've gone to university and you're now working and now you're driving this flashy car, they think that you're earning millions and that you're there. An unlimited budget to do whatever they need. So I always say to people, always, always, always just limit people's expectations so that you can do more with what you have. And I think we also need to just trust in God to know, Lord, how do you want me to steward this money? Help me steward this money. Help me distribute it the way that it should be. And I think a lot of young people forget that most important aspect as to, Lord, help me. I've gotten this great opportunity. I've gotten these blessings. How do I use them to most benefit the people around me, to show your love and to show my parents' love and appreciation for everything they've done for me? Because some people end up giving their parents everything and leave nothing for themselves to their own. And that sort of makes them go back on where they are. So I always say, make wise choices, stop and think. The decision I make today, how will it impact me going forward?
Wow. Wow. Another. What tips can you give us as women, on how to cope with challenges? But first, just share with us a little bit of, I know I've introduced you, but share whatever you want to share about yourself, because we're celebrating you as a woman.
Thank you so much, Mama Kay, for having me on your broadcast. It's such a privilege to be here. And for you, I'll always do anything because you have such worthy projects that you work on. My name is Tolu George. I'm a pastor. I speak on Radio K Pulpit on about 2 radio programs. One is called Everyday Living, where I speak about the Word of God, and the other is called The Throne Room, in which I speak, in which it's like a prayer program. And I've also written a book, a parenting book on, how to parent the next generation. It's called Raising Generation Next. And I'm also working on several new projects because of COVID. Well, I'd like to speak on a few tips that we can do, that we can work on during this COVID era that we found ourselves in. Now, you see, at the beginning of COVID, most of us saw it as an opportunity to get some rest and to also take some time out to just rest, really, and just rest. Renew ourselves. And then it extended for a long time, and people began to face increasing isolation, and people began to die. In fact, my cousin was, I think, the first Nigerian to die in diaspora in America. And a lot of people died, and and a lot of people started to lose their jobs, started to lose income. So depression began to creep in, and sickness began to creep in, and fear began to creep in, and a lot of people began to become so discouraged and so fearful, and they just didn't know what to do because they were stuck at home with their children. Some women were stuck at home with their abusers. Some women were stuck at home with, so many things. They wanted to see their family, they couldn't travel. So it was just a mess. But one of the things that I'll just share a few tips about how we coped, how I coped as a woman during COVID, and how I continue to cope. One of the first things that I did was I decided that usually when I send a message, I usually send a WhatsApp text or something. So what I decided was that to cope with the isolation that I was feeling, and I didn't want to slip into depression because you don't want to get depressed. And one of the things that powers depression is when you're inactive, when you feel as if you're not going ahead, you're not, it's not like you're not going ahead, but you're just inactive and you feel, like I'm not achieving, I'm not moving ahead. And, it just becomes a burden. So one of the things I did was to combat the increasing isolation, because first of all, I was stuck here in South Africa. I couldn't travel to Nigeria or anywhere in the world. I would call instead of sending a WhatsApp text. I would have long conversations with my old friends. We talked and talked and talked and talked, and we didn't stop talking. And that the best thing was to be able to see them. The next best thing was to be able to have a conversation with them, a meaningful, long conversation with them. So one of the other things that happened was we used technology to connect with family members all around the world. I remember an aunt of mine turned 70 last year, May. And when she's like the matriarch of my paternal side of the family. And when she turned 70, my sister had a fantastic idea. It was so revolutionary. I had never heard of that kind of thing then. This was in the beginning of lockdown, remember? So she was like, let's have a Zoom party. So we all connected, and I saw some of my cousins one of my cousins in particular who lives in the UK. We hadn't seen him since we were both in first year university, when he moved to the UK and just sort of like cut off. But we met with him, he came on with his family, all of us came on with our families, and all of us had a splendid time. And we repeated something like that in December, when with my mom, who hates technology, we said instead of calling, video call. So it closed that gap. The second thing that we did was, like Dr. Lynette said, she said, take every opportunity to exercise. So I would go on long walks, and that helped to release endorphins, which is what she said, makes you happy. In fact, I remember during the hard lockdown, because South Africa had one of the hardest lockdowns in the world. I remember seeing one of my neighbors. These are a couple that they run all the time. And I would see that during the lockdown, they would come out, they live in a complex, and with their small children, they would run up and down within the complex. And that kept the children a bit active. That kept them as a family active. So they didn't sleep, the endorphins would be released, they would get some exercise, they would get into the sun, get some vitamin D, and that really helped for them, The third thing that we did, which I'd like to suggest, is we embarked on new projects.
Okay.
Because a lot of us saw situations in which our income was shut down for extended periods of time. I am a pastor, so the churches were closed down for so many, many months last year, and even up the last month as well, June, I think, or July. The churches were all closed down. So that really impacted our incomes, because not only were people struggling financially, they couldn't give offerings. Now the church had to support a lot more people. And the church itself was not really making money as well, because people could not pay their offerings and things like that. But we had to find creative ways. We went online, we embarked on different projects. We went online, we had services online. Most of the churches went online. And well, we found out that we were reaching even more people online than we were reaching in our traditional churches. Because now we had people tuning in from India, from Pakistan, from Bahamas, people who we didn't know. We would see thousands of people watching the broadcast, and we'll be like, who are all these people? We don't know who they are. But people were being reached, And the third thing was because the fourth thing was because people's health and their livelihoods were affected. People became creative. I remember there's a young lady in our church who runs a creche, and the creches were closed for a long time. So she went and registered with Mr. Delivery, and she started to cook. And that tided her over. She began a business where she was cooking, and that actually fed her family and paid quite a few of their bills. And when schools reopened, she stayed there. So we all became creative in our thinking. I was thinking when I wrote my book, because my book was delivered to me right in the middle of COVID, And the original plan was, I'll go on a book tour And there was no bookstore forthcoming. So I had to start. That's why I was laughing at you today. I was like, all of us, we have become radio, TV broadcasters and producers and actors and actresses. You know,
creative.
So we learned to think out of the box. And in
Box
thinking
away,
out of
even.
we throw the box away. Yeah. So, you know, we thought out of the box and we actually improved. Yeah. Because one of the amazing things that God has enabled the human being to do is we have the ability to adapt and change situations and improve our methods. We're all here today because of adaptation.
Wow, I hope you found that useful. I keep learning, you know, every day. We appreciate you, our dear four women, for all those tips and advices that you were given from Dr. Lynette, talking about how for us women, we need to go for more tests for breast cancer and to incorporate a change of lifestyle. Eat well, do more exercise, and my dear Tertia, talking about how, yes, we need to rest. We need to take rest as an habit, and we just need to find ways to cope with juggling, you know, our roles and the different roles we play. And Tamara there saying, yes, we need to believe in ourselves and just do what is right for us. And Pastor George telling us about how, during COVID, a lot of women thought it was now time, you know, to rest and take a break. But, you know, the reality of it was different, and how she managed, you know, to use Zoom and technology to cope and still coping with it. So I hope you've learned one or two things, you know, that you can practice, because it is not easy out there juggling. We still juggle, you know, as mother, sister, community worker, business women, home worker, you know, various roles that we all play as women. And we need to go for tests, from, you know, mammogram to more tests, you know, that we need to do, you know, just to look after ourselves and to take time to rest. I need to listen to some of that. I'm being real with you, because yes, it's not easy. It is not easy, but we need to be intentional about doing this. And we need to keep working within our various communities, families, you know, businesses and organizations, you know, on supporting each other as women, and to be there for each other and to keep reassuring each other that we're not alone. We practice Ubuntu in South Africa, and I think that should be an African thing, which is I am because you are. It means we all work together, being our sister's keeper, brother's keeper as well. So remember, till next time, stay safe, look after yourself. This is really important. Take rest, do exercise, talk to people, find a support group, you know, to help you if you're struggling. And it's okay not to be okay. I need to say that. It is okay not to be okay. So this is Mama K signing off. Take care of yourself, stay safe, stay blessed. Remember, God is love. Love you all. God bless.